Hi everyone, Dr. Michael Gimity from endoguides.com here. Today, we're going to be going through how to design a fully guided implant surgery on BlueSkyBio, and we're going to be using the 3D Connections Space Mouse in order to do that. Now, if you don't know what a 3D mouse is, it's one of the best things you can invest in for any sort of CAD/CAM workflows. I'll have links to it below, but what it allows you to do it allows you to actually move your model that you're working on separate from your normal mouse that you have here. And what it'll allow you to do is free up your hand for any sort of camera movements to be able to then just be more efficient throughout the whole process. Now, I won't lie, it does have a pretty decent learning curve to it. So what this is just meant to show is, in the case of somebody who is used to using a 3D mouse a lot, what this looks like to actually do this for an implant planning workflow. So let's go ahead and get started. The files that we have today are actually from ProDigiDent. I'll have a link to them below. I found these online. If you want to follow along, or even better, you can be doing these for your own patient. Now, with any sort of digital implant planning, what you're going to need is two things. You're going to need the CBCT volume of the patient, which will be exported in a DICOM format. Really important in a DICOM format. And then also you'll need an intraoral scan or a scan of a cast of a patient in an STL format. Okay, and that's what those sample files are that you can find down below. So you can see here that we have these just put on our desktop right here, both the DICOM volume and then also the STL. So what we're first going to do is we're first going to go through and open up BlueSkyBio right here. And this is what the homepage looks like. So we're going to be clicking on implant planning and surgical guides, and then the middle one, which is import the patient's CBCT CT scan. So we're going to import that right here and hit OK. And you're going to see right here, this is just if you're changing the volume size, which we're not going to be doing in this case, hit OK. Next, we're going to click on import STL model, and then we're going to locate that sample STL here as well. So you can see it shows on the right side what STL we're going to be bringing in, and this is the correct one. Select mandible, because obviously we're working on the mandible here, and we're going to align the two of them automatically. Now, this is the first thing you can kind of see as I'm using the 3D mouse to move everything around. It's able to zoom in a lot easier. You're able to have a lot more control over it. And like I said, you can see my mouse cursor is not moving at all, which allows us later on to have a much more efficient workflow throughout this entire thing. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hide the CT scan on there. Just have this. We're going to go to continue implant planning. I'm going to go to the nerve list on the right side and auto detect both IA nerves. This is something super powerful in BlueSkyBio, just so we're aware of where the nerves are for this. Now, one of the things with the 3D Connections Space Mice, I have the Enterprise version, which has these programmable shortcuts on the top, as well as almost like half of a keyboard on here, which is overkill, if we're going to be honest, for any sort of dental CAD/CAM. I love it because it allows me to customize every single one of these shortcuts. We have 12 shortcuts here for things that I'm doing a lot. So you'll see throughout this, if you see me hitting a button rather than moving my mouse over to the right side to click on like surfaces or implant lists or any of these other things, that is what I'm doing over here on my left hand. Okay. So just don't think that this isn't just magically opening everything. This is something it does take a little bit of time to set up, because also the shortcuts that I use a lot are going to be different than the shortcuts that you use a lot. But it is a very, very powerful tool that I find that it expedites my workflow fairly significantly as well. Something else to note is that one of the things you have to do in a lot of these programs is hold down Shift or hold down Control to like for BlueSkyBio, you have to hold down Shift in order to draw the line that defines where your actual, where your line for your surgical guide is going to be. And that's one of the things I like over here, that you can just hold down Shift with your left pinky and then still use the 3D mouse as well. Again, it's small optimizations, but small optimizations across a large sample size will yield some more efficiency and decrease time for the same end result. So that's what this looks like. So if you see me hitting those buttons, that's what I'm going to be doing with this. So then what we're going to be doing next is I'm going to be going through and adding some teeth. We're going to add back in the CT scan that you can see here. And this is just a segmentation of it. You can run a more accurate segmentation on this, which I'll have a future video on if you guys would be interested in that. So going to hide the CT again, and then we're going to go through and add teeth here. Okay. Now, one of the most important and more recent phenomena that you're seeing in implant planning is the idea of prosthodontically driven placement. Okay. Just putting an implant in the mouth is cool. Okay. Maybe you'll get lucky and get it in the right position. But the true power of a surgical guide and a fully guided workflow is that you're able to plan exactly where you want this implant so that it will make your life, whether if you're the dentist that's going to be restoring this tooth or your referring dentist's life, much easier when it comes to actually restoring this tooth. Okay. We've all tried to restore implants that were in bizarre angulations and bizarre placements, which then results in a compromised prognosis for the patient. And it also makes your job a lot harder in actually restoring it. I mean, if the angulation is completely off or the location is completely off, that's just not a fun day to restore that. And that's one of the biggest powers of these fully guided workflows. So in order to have a prosthodontically driven approach to this, we're going to go ahead and actually put in waxed up teeth for both of these first molars. So you can see we're doing both 19 and 30 in this situation. So the thing is that with BlueSkyBio, when we add in a waxed up tooth, we can actually automatically attach an implant to that to get us a general idea of where we need to go. Okay. So we went to the tooth list on the right side under panels, and then we clicked on add tooth. So we're going to select, we're going to be doing the lower right first molar first, and we're going to select the implant down here at the bottom. In this situation, we're going to be using Nobel Active. I'm going to go with a 4.3 millimeter diameter, and we're going to start with 10 millimeters in length. This is a pretty straightforward case since this is a sample case. And so we're going to click on that, hit OK. And then I'm going to click on exactly where I want it. And then you can see it just pops right in with the implant. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side for tooth number 19 over here, and double click and boom, it's in. I'm skipping through the load times for this just to make it a little bit of an easier watch, but it's pretty fast. So let's analyze these wax ups. Now, these wax ups don't need to be perfect, but they need to be roughly in the right area. So you can see the height and all of that. These are pretty much spot on. Generally, don't mess around with the anatomy too much because this is not going to be your final crown that you're going to be producing. And I'm going to scroll through the DICOM here on the axial view just to go ahead and make sure that we're roughly in the right area. And then you can see the red border is going to be that waxed up tooth over there on the right side. So now I'm going to click on implant list, and let's go to our first implant right here. So you can see we have the snapped to view right here, and we can see our position's not terrible, but I don't love the angulation. So I'm going to just angulate this a little bit more and then move this bodily towards the distal just a little bit right there. See if that gets us in a area that I like a little bit more. And you can see that waxed up tooth kind of rotating around. And like I said, this is a pretty straightforward case, but I do like, this does make everything a little bit easier for our planning purposes. So you can move the waxed up tooth around a little bit, or if we want to change this angulation a little bit more, I'm going to angulate it towards the distal a little bit more just to get that path of insertion a little bit better on the actual, for the implant restoration that we're going to be planning. So one of the things that you can do here is that I'm actually going to zoom in here, and we're going to go ahead and measure from, so that green line coming across, that's going to be the gingival, that's the gingiva that's sitting over the currently edentulous space. So let's measure from the base of the implant to the gingiva right there. That's just going to give us a rough idea. We like to have at least 3 millimeters from the base of the implant to our proposed CEJ. And we're going to go through here, and I'm going to show you the 3D reconstruction right here, just to show you kind of what that gingival margin is looking like. And again, it's not exact, but this is just trying to get us in a rough idea. This is a lot more important if we're doing an anterior case than a posterior case, but I do want to make my life as easy as possible to restore this case. Okay. Now let's go ahead, and you can see I like this placement. We're a little bit subcrestal, but I would like to have enough height between the base of the implant and also the crown just to get that emergence profile to be what I want it to be. So let's go through here. We're going to scroll through this. Again, you're just looking for anything that jumps out at you. Like I said, this is a pretty straightforward case, so there's nothing too crazy that you're going to be seeing here. Now, I want to just make sure you can see it clearly. We have no proximity issues to the IA nerve, but let's go ahead and just measure that just to be safe. And also as an example, in case in the future, you have one that's a little bit more suspicious. So we have 7.71 millimeters. That's plenty of space. Nothing. We're not worried about the IA here whatsoever. And you can see that these measurements actually stay on that specific slice. So you can see as we scroll through, we can see those measurements that we took earlier. So let's go ahead and switch over to the other implant. Same thing here. Going to move it bodily to the distal and then angulate it towards the mesial just a little bit. Similar measurements on this one that we'll take here in a second. But we're going to measure from here to the base. We're going to go a little bit below the gingival margin. We're at like, the thing is that the very base of the waxed up tooth does extend a little bit more apically than the actual tooth will. So you kind of got to estimate through here. Again, if you want this to be super exact, you can. If this is an anterior case, I would. But in this case, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. Now we're going to look at this path of insertion. You can see me moving this around with the 3D mouse over here. And you can see path of insertion is going to be pretty much straight through our waxed up tooth, which is ideal. Going to make my life easy when we go to restore this. And then you can see when I go ahead and hide the scan, this is going to be a rougher idea of where that gingival margin is going to be, and make sure we have enough height from a restorative perspective as well. So I like this. This is not too bad at all. Like I said, this is about as straightforward of a case as you can get for planning. But let's go ahead now, and you can see the pano view in the bottom right. Some people really like the panoramic view. I don't personally see too much of a value in it, but hey, to each their own. Scrolling through the axial view here, and you can see, again, straightforward case. Really nothing too crazy for this. So let's go to guide fabrication now. You can see I hit my shortcut for that. So we're going to first off define the insertion direction here. So you can see red is going to be the blocked out portion. And this is just all the purpose for this. This isn't a retainer. We don't need to make sure this actually seats for a patient or retains for a patient. We need to make sure this just easily fits. So I like to bring this, you can define the insertion direction from the view right there. And then I'm actually going to decrease the maximum allowed undercut to 0 just to make sure there's no interferences. I've had better results with that, but again, this all depends on your printer, and in my setup, this works better. So we're going to draw the curve right here. So I'm going to click on automatic curve. This is the one that it just makes your life a little bit easier. It's a lot of times easier to just go ahead and edit the curve that it gives you rather than start from scratch. I'm going to bring up all of these dots. I'm not holding down shift or anything. You do have to hold down shift if you want to add a new dot, but I'm just dragging these up just to make sure that it seats as easily as possible. And we are going to drop down to basically the gingival margin for around the implants that we're actually going to be placing. And you can see here, we're going to bring this down kind of to the CEJ in most of these areas, dipping down a little bit, kind of right around the implant, just to make sure that we have enough structure there so there's no distortion when we actually put these sleeves in there. So we're raising it up here. Pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, if you want to draw a new one, new line, hold down shift to do that. That's one of the things I love about this 3D mouse and then the other thing too is right click on these to delete it. So if I right click on this dot, it deletes it. And then if I hold down shift over here, that you can see over here on the left side of my 3D mouse, I can add a new point if I want to and adjust those however I want. So you can mess around with this as much or as little as you want. And this, a lot of times the success of this depends on your 3D printer that you have. So I like this. Next up, we're going to add windows. So the purpose of these windows is to make sure that the guide is fully seated at all times, okay? If the guide is not fully seated at all times, there is no point in you actually making a guide for this case, okay? We need to make sure what we're doing here in the software correlates to what we're going to be seeing clinically. So I like to make really large windows. Only purpose for this is it removes any sort of ledges that could develop. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. You can see that there's actually a little bit of a gap between this window and the tooth right there. So I want to bring this down so that there is no gap, just to make sure that this window is clear and also that there's no distortion for it. So if there's a little gap in there, then it will have 3D printed material in that, which is just not going to be printed accurately because it's unsupported, and it's also going to be like 0.1 millimeters thick, which is just not going to be a recipe for a successful print in that area. So I'm going to put one anterior to this as well. You'll see when this goes and actually generates the surgical guide that it will generally put a couple windows just right on the adjacent teeth to it. But I do always like to add more verification windows than you think is totally necessary, just because, like I said, if you don't have this guide fully seated at all times, I would actually postulate that it's more dangerous than doing this freehand, because you have something in your hands that you think is accurate, that you think you're placing these implants in this specific area, but if it's not fully seated, then you're not. So you have this false confidence that can lead to a lot more issues. You can see here, same thing. We have a little bit of a gap through there. So I'm just going to bring this down. And again, I'm checking the borders of this to make sure that we have at least a couple millimeters of material for this 3D printed guide. And that's just going to be that junction between and a gap between the window and the curve, as you can see here. So go back to define insertion direction. Now, one of the things we need to do is I need to go to the implant list right here, and I need to make sure that I toggle on these sleeves for the actual 3D printed guide. If you don't toggle these on, then they will not show up in your final surgical guide that you fabricate. So again, I cut out the load times, but this is what it'll look like when you are done. Obviously, the waxed up teeth are not going to be in there, but I do like what it looks like here. Let's go to the text tool, and I'm going to add emboss my name onto this. I like to emboss my patient's name onto this, but since this is a test, we'll just do my own name. And then you're going to click apply text. I do also like to click engrave. In my opinion, it prints better, and you can see it's engraved in there. And then I'm also going to put EndoGuides over here on the other side. This is more of an optional step, but trust me, it makes your life much easier when you have multiple guides that you got to match to your patients. You don't want to be grabbing the wrong patient's guide for an implant surgery. That just is not going to be fun. So to me, this looks great. I'm super happy with this. Like I said, this is just a test case, but this will give you an idea of what to do for it. So we're actually ready to export here. So I have the export button right here on my mouse. I'm going to deselect everything other than the guide with windows. You can rename it if you want. The other thing too is we did export an undercut model here as well. And the purpose for that is I do like to print the model for this as well. So I've got a couple 3D printers, one of them for surgical guides and another one specifically just for models. So it takes me another couple minutes to print the guide out. But what does this do? This allows me to go through and actually verify that the design is fine, but then also that the print is fine as well. If I'm using two separate 3D printers with two separate materials and one fits on the other, then I know, hey, this is planned correctly. And then if it doesn't fit in the patient's mouth or if there's an issue, then I've removed the variable of, hey, there was a misprint. Because the thing with 3D printing is great, but it's not perfect every single time. And you need to be able to be thinking through how to isolate these variables as you're working with any sort of CAD CAM workflow in order to make sure that you are printing as accurately and consistently as possible. So lastly, we're going to generate this drill report. So you can come over here to screenshots on the right side, click on drill report, and it's going to take some screenshots and then export this as a PDF that you can see here. If we did this, like I said, we did this with Nobel rather than BlueSkyBio's guided workflow. So if you use BlueSkyBio's guided workflow, it will give you a little bit more information through this so that there's a better integration with it. Same thing if we did use DTX to design this for Nobel. It's going to give you a much more comprehensive workflow with the CBCT or the surgical guide drill report. So there it is. We're ready to take this STL file to our 3D printer to go ahead and print it and schedule our patient in for this fully guided implant surgery. So I appreciate you for watching. Thank you guys so much. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out, drop a comment below, or reach out to me via email. I hope you found this helpful and you could see kind of how you can use one of these 3D mice in order to make your workflow more efficient whenever you're working with any sort of CAD CAM software, especially in dentistry. I would highly recommend getting one. And when you do get one, it's going to be a little bit frustrating at the beginning, speaking from experience on that one, just because it is a new workflow and it is kind of counterintuitive. But once you get the hang of it, it greatly improves your efficiency. And I promise you, you will really enjoy using it. So thank you again for watching. Have a great rest of your day. And like I said, my name is Dr. Michael Gimity, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.